Alright, what's up everyone? My name's Domestius. I've been playing Shaman for about 10 years in high keys and raiding, as well as a lot of other classes and specs. And today I thought I'd just do a quick impromptu Season 3 Mythic Plus guide for Elemental. Um, it's not going to be a fancy guide or anything. I'm just going to go through quickly and talk about the basic things, and then the last part of the video I'll go through the new build that I've been playing in keys for about a week or two, using deeply rooted elements and Necrolord. I'm not sure if I'm the first person to play it in high keys, but I sort of started trying it, and it's actually turning out to be pretty good. So it's definitely more boss damage. It's more damage for like 2 to 4 target usually, and I've found it to be potentially more overall as well than Echoes, depending on the key. But yeah, I'll talk more about that build later. First of all, I'll just go through like the main sort of builds and covenants and legendaries and whatnot. So obviously the main build that we're all used to playing is just Echoes of the Great Sundering, and you're going to be Night Fae and you're going to be playing Karain. This conduit you're going to use probably all the time just for safety. This one you're going to use in every key as well, because it's just reduces the cooldown of your utility totems that are pretty good, and you can have permanent Earthbind as well. First Strike, obviously, it's like pretty much the only reason that people run Karain usually. This conduit you probably want to run as well. It's a bit more of a hassle these days to sort of make good use of it, but you still probably want to run it. And this one you can run in Fortified usually, but if it's tyrannical, you could probably think about switching it to Essential Extraction just for some more boss damage. The other build, I guess, well, it's not really another build, it's everything the same except Necrolord pretty much. So usually you're going to want to play this dude, but if it's tyrannical spies or something like that, you can think about playing this guy as well. It's probably a little bit more single target. The whole Night Fae versus Necrolord thing, both of them are pretty similar in damage, honestly. Night Fae definitely has a lot more sort of like initial bursts, obviously with First Strike. Generally you're going to find Necrolord, I think, is going to be slightly more single target, depending on the fight. Like Hakar, for example, I think both of them can perform about equally. Like, you obviously get really good first strike value, but you can also get really good like primordial wave value as well, with the extra targets that come in. So what you're probably going to find is when you do super high keys, like you're just going to need to be Necrolord to have that extra survivability anyway. So I would definitely recommend sort of, practicing both and being able to play both. The other two covenants, Venthyr and Kyrian, I wouldn't worry about them too much. Yeah, so Night Fae, I think probably just the default pick usually, especially in like weekly 15s or whatever, or anything like below a 25. But once you start to get 25 and above, you probably want to think about Necrolord just simply for the survivability. And generally, you want to be Necrolord for Plagueful or Theatre as well if you're the only Necrolord in the group. And the other build, well, I guess I'll talk about it more later, but yeah, the other build is basically this deeply rooted elements, and you're still probably going to want to play this, and the talents that you're going to want to run is this for the new build, but I'll just go through the talents in general first. So this first row, Echo of the Elements, I think you just take in all forms of PvE content right now. Aftershock as well, pretty much just take that in every single key. You run LE Blast quite a lot in raid, I think, for the pure single target, but as soon as another target comes in, especially if you're running Echoes or DRE, Aftershock just pulls ahead. This row you can kind of run whatever you like, really. Like, usually you're probably just going to default to Spirit Wolf, but Earth Shield is also good. It's like provides a decent amount of passive healing throughout a key. And Static Charge can be good if your group is low on AoE stops, I suppose. It'll turn Cap Totem into like a 26-second cooldown, I think, so that's also something you can consider as well. This row, you either take Moat or Storm Melee. Usually it's Storm Melee if you, well, it's always Storm Melee if you're playing the the regular builds with echoes, regardless of whether you're Knight fan Necrolord. Liquid Magnetotem, unfortunately, we never use at the moment. But Master of the Elements, you probably want to run if you're running DRE. The reason for that is that with this legendary and with this build, you're going to be lava bursting like all the time, pretty much, just even on AoE. So like your most previous spell just before you spend on Earthquake is like always going to be lava burst, which means you're always going to have that buff going. So, and the other reason is like a lot of this build involves multi-dotting with Flame Shock, and while you have Fire Rally active, when you Flame Shock, it's going to have a lot more duration, so it's going to help you get multiple Flame Shocks out and keep them on the targets. Obviously, when you proc Ascendants, it refreshes them, but sometimes it can be like quite a while until your first Ascendants proc, and then if you're running Storm Melee when you're doing this, your first Flame Shock or two might actually fall off. So this is why, at least at the moment, I feel like Moat is a better pick when you're running this setup in keys. But as I said, I'll talk more about it later. This row here, generally you just default to Ancestral Guidance because it's just usually the most impactful out of all of them. It really shines when you're doing a lot of AoE and the group is taking a lot of damage at the same time. So if you think about Thrash from the shards in the first half of Halls of Atonement, it's like a perfect example, right? So generally there'll be a lot of AoE around it, and while it's thrashing you can just press AG, and depending on how much damage you're doing you can pretty much just top the group. This row here, it's Primal Elementalist in all PV content right now. This row here, Stormkeeper in every key, I believe. I did try Ascendance a little bit when I first was trying this build in keys, but it's generally Stormkeeper is just better. Like you can kind of do Stormkeeper, like you can pre-cast Stormkeeper, you can do it at the beginning of a pull in between the cooldowns of your Flame Shock as you're building up your multi-dotting. And it's also like just strong on single target as well. So this is just your default pick in every key. So that's basically all the builds summed up, I suppose. You know, these two legendaries are the only ones that you're going to be using in keys. The other ones just don't stack up. This one is obviously our single target one, and it's good on single target, but it's really worth running. Like the only dungeon you think about running it is Spires, and that's only in the second half of the dungeon really, which would require you to hearth out and get someone back, which usually isn't worth the time. So I would just stick to these two. So for stats now, stats pretty much like anything except mastery is fine. Like for AoE, generally crit's going to be your best. For single target, generally haste first are going to be your best. But they're all pretty even, honestly. Like that's what I found from doing like hundreds of sims and stuff. So anything that's not mastery is generally fine. Mastery is also like pretty decent on single target anyway. So you know, you can do sims to figure all your own stuff out, but generally like eye level's probably just going to be best. But you probably also want to just think about the dungeon that you're doing and think about the affixes, and also think about the key level, because once you get to a certain key level you're just going to end up having to stack verse anyway, which, you know, at that point you're probably just not really concerned about your stats for damage. You just want to stack verse just to live, and verse is like good for us really in single target and AoE, so that works out quite well. So yeah, stats I wouldn't worry about too much. Just as long as you're not running like, you know, 1000 mastery or something like that, you should be fine. Which leads us on to gear, I guess. Gearing is just sort of like, I just got this today actually. I don't have a 278 offhand unfortunately, but I'm pretty sure this is your best weapon. But as long as all your gear doesn't, you know, have a lot of mastery on it, it should be fine. The important pieces to consider, I suppose, are the trinkets. These two trinkets are going to be abyss trinkets. This one is a must-have, even if it's heroic. Obviously, depending on the eye levels of the trinkets that you might have, you might need to sort of sim them and decide which two are best for you. But generally, these two are going to be your best. Substitutes for them could be Elegy or Utilise, possibly Ruby as well, but generally these two are the main substitutes if you don't have these two. The reason this one is so powerful, well, first of all, it's like this for so many specs in the game for rating and Mythic Plus. We are definitely one of them. And you can pair it up with Potion a lot of the time, and generally in Mythic Plus and like high Mythic Plus, it's really beneficial to be able to sort of front load your damage every 5 minutes rather than have like just constant damage all the time. So like generally in high keys, you're going to be doing like, you know, a big pull every few minutes or every 5 minutes, or like a boss or whatever. Like especially the first pull of a key, like it's so important to be able to put all your damage into a you know, a certain period of time, if that makes sense. Like if you think about shard pulls, it's really good to have for them. If you think about, for example, Hakar Tyrannical, when you lost at about 40% or 50 maybe, you really want to make sure that you can do as much damage as possible at that point to kill the boss. And you know, trinkets like these are really insane for that. Plus it gives you verse, which just gives you DR as well, and a free fleshcraft. Usually you don't want to use that because you want to just pop it and start doing damage straight away, but if for whatever reason you need the fleshcraft, then you can just channel it. So yeah, those are the two main trinkets that you want to try and get. Simming as well, I mentioned it briefly before, like I wouldn't worry about doing too many sims. Like I do a lot of sims just because that's what I like to do, but generally you're probably just going to have like the highest item level in each slot, like generally, but you do want to sim it to make sure, but it depends on like what you sim. So simming for keys is quite difficult, obviously. If you sim for raid for just like a single target boss, it's quite straightforward. You just sim like, you know, 5 minutes patchwork or 7 minutes patchwork, or maybe one boss cleave out, whatever. But for keys, you obviously have to factor in so many different fight styles. So what I do is I just do a bunch of different sims and I just make a decision based on all of them. So generally I'll do like one boss cleave ad 3 minutes, two boss cleave ad 3 minutes, two boss cleave ad 1 minute 30, three boss cleave ad 1 minute 30, five boss cleave ad 1 minute 30. And then as well, like I might do just for like Arden World stuff, I guess sometimes I might do like a 7 or 8 boss cleave ad 1 minute. And then you just want to have a look at all of them really and just sort of make a decision based on what you know, what the affixes are, and tyrannical, fortified, whatever. If you're lucky, you're probably just gonna it's probably just gonna end up telling you most of your stuff is the same for all of the sims, especially the trinkets. Like these two are probably just gonna come out on top no matter what sim you do. But I guess the bigger thing is like rings and weapons. You can sim like talents and soulbinds as well, but generally we already know like what to run for that. So yeah, I would definitely, if you're at a complete loss with all the gear that you have, you can definitely do those sorts of sims and just sort of figure it out. But like I said earlier with the stats, like as long as you're not like stacking mastery, like you should be fine, honestly. So utility now, I'll just go through our utility. We have pretty good utility, generally speaking. I guess what we lack in overall, we make up for in utility and survivability and off healing and stuff. So first of all, healing stream, like obviously it's quite minor, but if you're, you know, doing a pack or a boss or whatever and you have to move and you just don't have an instant cast, you can just drop it. Like it, you know, it's usually worth a global, especially if it's a boss where like healing is really tough for the healer, like, you know, the bosses in Sanguine Depths, for example. Tremor Totem, obviously pretty niche, but very useful in Pulls first boss if someone gets stuck outside of the circle, I guess. Miss first boss, it's extremely good for the fear, obviously, and that's pretty much it, I think. I think I could have some use here, but anyway, it's obviously really good in a couple of dungeons. AG I spoke about before, like it's super good off healing, one of the best pieces of utility that we have. Earthly, I guess some aspects of it can be considered utility. It's a bit hard to use these days because you don't really want to like despawn your main elemental because you have it out like most of the time, but assuming you have the correct things on autocast on all three of your elementals, what your Earthly is going to do is it'll run in and single target stun whatever you're targeting, and then it'll just start like taunting things and helping the tank out a bit. But as like when depending on the key, if it's a high key and it starts taunting like quite a lot of things, it's probably just going to die pretty quickly. So, and you just want to be careful when you use it as well. Like you'll probably find that a lot of tanks will freak out and not really know what's going on and not even realize there's an Earth Ellie down, but generally you want to use Earth Ellie for your own sort of survivability in DR. Like it's rare that tanks are going to call for your Earth Ellie these days. And you also want to be careful like using it at a bad time. Like you don't really want to, if a tank's like gathering a pull and pulling it into a boss, you don't want to Earth Ellie as the tank's gathering the pull, because the Earth Ellie might just like get aggro of stuff and then it'll just mess up the pull entirely, and the yads won't the trash won't come onto the boss and stuff. So you just want to be careful with it. Obviously you can move it around with move pet, which is good, but yeah, usually you're just going to want it for the wall and the extra HP sometimes. Stone Form, I guess, can be considered utility. You can dispel yourself and get rid of bleeds and stuff. Cap Totem is that AoE stun, obviously. Very good. Earthbind Totem, AoE slow. With the Conduit, you can have permanent uptime on it. Hex is our hard CC. 20-second cooldown. Beasts and Humanoids, and you can also use it to just stop casts as well. If your group is lacking single target stuns and you're able to time it, in like halls for example, if your group doesn't have a stop for an upcoming loyal beast, you can try and time it, so you just hex it and stop it that way. So it can be a bit difficult, but it's something that you can think about. Thunderstorm is an AoE knockback, and it knocks things really fast, so you got to be careful. Sometimes you can help the tank out if they're running from Gargons and halls or something, you just knock them back, but generally they'll call for things that they need. And yeah, as I said, you just want to be careful because it's a super big knockback. You don't want to knock things into other packs or whatever. You can just knock single mobs back to where they should be. Sometimes, like, I don't know, Inspires, if people aren't stacked in for whatever reason and a Praetor leaps out to someone, you can sort of just run out and sort of knock it back into the pack. It's usually pretty useful. This is our Dispel. We dispel curses as shamans, so that's pretty useful in halls. I believe it's very important to have a curse dispel in halls. I'm not sure if the 30s that have been done without a curse dispel. I've got a feeling they would have been actually, but anyway, very good in this key, and also very good in Sanguine as well, if people have the curse casted on them. But having said that, you can just interrupt that cast, and you can also line the cast as well. And you can dispel some curses in theater as well, but it's sort of minor in theater. And that's all the utility. Survivability, just quickly. Obviously got Astral Shift, 12 seconds, 40% DR. That's our main wall, and you need to be mindful as well if you're playing with a Holy Priest. You need to be mindful of when they use symbols, and just keep an eye on the cooldown of it, because if they use symbols, it's probably going to come back up very quickly, and you need to keep in mind the buff as well. If you kill it's going to come up also. Earth Ellie gives you another wall as well. It's the Earth Ellie's ability that's off autocast that you are in control of. So it's called Hardened Skin. It's a wall for yourself and your Earth Ellie. It's the same as Astral Shift, but it's 10 seconds instead of 12. If you get rid of your Earth Ellie, you're still going to have the buff as well. So if you have like your main Ellie out and you just you know, you need something and you don't have shift, you can Earth Ellie, Hardened Skin, dismiss, get, and then, you know, use this one again when it comes up. Fleshcraft obviously is pretty big for survivability as well. If you're Necrolord, you take 20% less damage while you're channeling it. So if you want to time it perfectly, if it's a big hit of damage, like you can make it so the hit occurs just at the end of the channel, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. Generally, you can just hit it, and it's, you know, it's a pretty nice shield, right? Like it's pretty big. And then the other survivability thing we have is just healing surge, I guess. If you're just dying and you need a heal, you can just press healing surge and heal yourself up. It's not a massive heal usually, but it's, you know, it's better than nothing. Sometimes you just have to simply healing surge yourself in some fights or trash. And that brings me to the rotation and gameplay stuff. So, like I said, I'm not going to go through Echo's gameplay, unfortunately. I'm sure there are plenty of guides out there that go through that. It's relatively straightforward. The only rotational stuff I wanted to go through was concerned with the new build that I've been playing. So once again, the build is Deeply Rooted Elements with Necrolord. These are the talents. You can try this, but I have felt Moat to be better. Like I mentioned earlier, it gives you extra duration on flame shocks, which is very useful for when you're starting out a pull if you're unlucky and you don't get an Ascendance proc for quite a while. And also, you're going to be Lava Bursting all the time anyway, and Lava Burst is always going to be the spell that you cast before you spend with this build. So you're always just going to naturally have this buff. Whereas if you're playing Echoes, playing Moat can be really awkward because, like, you kind of just have to, like, playing Echoes is about, like, cycling through your Maelstrom as quickly as possible, right? But when you have to weave Lava Bursts into there, it can be a bit awkward, especially if you have to hardcast it. Whereas when you're playing this, you're just going to always have it naturally. And it's a pretty big buff to Earthquake, right? 20%. So I recommend these talents with DRE. If you've had more success with like a slightly different setup with DRE, definitely just let me know in the comments. But this is what I feel like is best. Stats for this build as well, you're probably going to want to go for Haste Verse. And obviously Bonesmith with these two conduits. This one is extremely big. It's very, very big for damage when you get a reset on that, usually in an AoE pack. So yeah, I'll just see if I can bring up some gameplay. So I'll just show some brief clips of gameplay, I guess, of this is just me and some pugs like the other day playing the build. Hopefully I can just show sort of what happens. So generally when you're playing this build, the idea is you want to flame shock as many things as possible, and you want to lava burst as much as possible, and you're just fishing for Ascendance procs, basically. That's it. Stormkeeper, you can kind of use towards the beginning of your pull, in between the flame shock cooldowns, just to get it out of the way, because it's still obviously good to use, because it does a lot of damage, and it, you know, gives you a lot of Maelstrom, and you can spend a lot of Maelstrom. It's obviously really good, but yeah, you just want to, you want to, like, I don't know, if you've played, like, Elemental on Pantheon or Lords, like, it's fairly similar, right? Like, you're just making sure Flame Shock is on as many things as possible with Flame Shock and Primordial Wave, and you're just spamming Lava Burst, even on AoE, because you're, like, when you get a proc of your Legendary, obviously the Ascendance automatic Lava Burst is just going to hit everything with Flame Shock on it. That in itself is going to give you a lot of Maelstrom, and you can just Earthquake after that, and it all just, like, so the build is quite RNG, but it's definitely better on single target. That's what I found. Like, one of Elemental's weaknesses in keys for a long time, and it definitely is now, is its single target and boss damage. I find that it's usually quite poor if you're running Echoes and Karain. Like, usually your single target's quite poor, actually. But with this build, I've found sometimes I just straight up delete bosses if I get good RNG, which is really good. And even in a pack as well like this, I think I got pretty decent procs. You know, the damage is quite decent as well. So like I said, if you have any questions about this build, like just leave a comment or just hit me up on the socials that I have in the description. I've been playing it for a couple of weeks and I genuinely think that it could be better than the Echoes build in pretty much any key, really, like no matter if it's tyrannical or fortified. Oh, I wasted Stormkeeper here actually because yeah, I didn't realize it was gonna wait for them to pop. But anyway, I'll just see what I do here so we can have a look at it again. So there's an Ascendance proc, there's Flame Shock on the third target, and I should put it on the fourth soon. Water Wave, I think I have it on 4 or 5. Yep, there's a proc. And we're still just gonna Lava Burst, still fishing for procs. Flame Shock's available. Oh, it's on everything now, so that's fine. And yeah, like it's just Lava Burst and spend Earthquake and then just Lava Burst again, and that's pretty much it. And if you get a lot of Ascendance procs, you're just gonna fire out meatballs and do big damn. Like that's it. It's a really fun build as well. Like it's, I would say it's so much more fun than the Echoes build. So if you want to just try something new, I definitely recommend it. I'm not too sure how this build is going to go in low keys though. Like I think it's really only going to shine in high keys pretty much, because you, especially for like trash packs, you're going to need that time to sort of like ramp up and get your flame shocks out on a few things. So yeah, I mean, I'm fairly certain that the Echoes Karain build's probably just going to be your best bet still in like, you know, weekly 15s and stuff, but this build for high keys, I think it has a lot of potential. And I'm excited to keep playing it and see what I can do with it, and I'm excited to see if other people start playing it as well. Yeah, I'm not too sure if I'm like the first person that started playing the build, but like in high keys at least, but I've had success with it and I'm enjoying it, and yeah, like I said, I'm looking forward to continuing to play it. I guess just to finish off, I'll talk about the meta a little bit. I won't sugarcoat it. We are not meta at the moment in keys. The meta at the moment is Warlock Survival Windwalker. That's pretty set in stone. Before the Windwalker buffs, it was Warlock Survival X pretty much. But since Monk got buffed, it's pretty comfortably in there as the third DPS. We're not terrible, and obviously you only really need to be concerned with the meta if you're doing, you know, keys that are above, I don't know, 26 or 27, but it depends on, you know, how good your group is and everything like that. You know, some people, even if they're doing, you know, pushing and they're doing 20s, they're still going to want to stick to the meta, and that's, you know, that's understandable as well. So like I said, we're not terrible. We're kind of just middle of the pack, I guess, in terms of, you know, overall, and what we bring to the group. But nevertheless, it's definitely, I mean, at least this new build, it's definitely one of the most fun builds of Elemental I've played in a very long time in Keystones. So that's pretty much all I wanted to go through. I will put timestamps in the description of the video, and I'll put my socials there as well. I do stream on my Twitch there, raid and keys, but unfortunately I think a lot of the keys that I'm going to be doing for the rest of the season are probably going to be on my Warlock. I'm not really sure how much more score I'm going to be able to get on my Shaman, to be honest. My Warlock's around about the same score at the time of making this video, so you know, it's obviously a lot easier to get score on a Warlock, and I'm gearing my Windwalker as well. So anyway, I really appreciate you watching the video. I hope I was able to help and give you some insights and show you the new build, the DRE build. Keen to see how it pans out with the community, I suppose. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.